not erotic, but when it really is erotic. Welcome to Cock's Corner, everybody. This is the show where I read Harry Potter every single day. We've been doing so since the quarantine. We're spending an hour together just to forget things, to connect with people, and have fun. So I have not read Harry Potter yet. This is my first time reading it, so please don't spoil anything in the chat or in the comments, please, because that would steal the joy of discovery of the story that we have in front of us. So, last time we got to the Kreachers story, the chapter in the 7th book. Now, we didn't quite get to Kreachers' actual story. We got to a letter that Harry discovered his mother wrote. It was very sweet. It was a very nice moment amongst all the turmoil happening in the story. It's a very exciting book. I really do love it. Okay, so let's just get started. Let's get into it. I just had a nap. I woke up from a nap. I'm in that weird in-between space where you're like, I'm awake, but I'm not really. I might just be dreaming this. I might just be floating and reading stories to people in my dreams, which isn't that the sweetest thing ever. My mom is in the chat. Nitrambam. Well, welcome Nitrambam's mom. We got a couple of parents in the chat sometimes. I love it. Welcome. Hope you have a good time here. So we're just gonna get started right into it when I think it was Hermione is telling Harry we found him. I guess because I think it's going to get into Kreachers section because it's called Kreacher Story, but we will see where we're going. Harry! 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 I'm here, he called. What's happened? There was a clatter of footsteps outside the door, and Hermione burst inside. We woke up and didn't know where you were, she said breathlessly. She turned and shouted over her shoulder. Ron, I found him! Ron's annoyed voice echoed distantly from several floors below. Good. Tell him for me he's a git. Did I get it right? It's a git? Harry, don't just disappear, please. We were terrified. Why did you come up here anyway? She gazed around the ransacked room. What have you been doing? Look what I've just found. He held out his mother's letter. Hermione took it and read it, while Harry watched her. When she reached the end of the page, she looked up at him. I got it! It's Git! It's Git! Yes! Yes! I finally did it! Oh, Harry. And there's this too. He handed her the torn photograph, and Hermione smiled at the baby zooming in and out of sight on the toy broom. I've been looking for the rest of the letter, Harry said, but it's not here. Hermione glanced around. Did you make all this mess, or was some of it done when you got here? Someone had searched before me, said Harry. I thought so. Every room I looked into on the way up has been disturbed. What were they after, do you think? Information on the Order, if it was Snape. But you'd think he'd already have all he needed. I mean, he was in the Order, wasn't he? Well, then, said Harry, keen to discuss his theory. What about information on Dumbledore? The second page of this letter, for instance. You know this Bathilda my mum mentions? You know who she is? Who? Bathilda Bagshot, the author of A History of Magic, said Hermione, looking interested. So your parents knew her? She was an incredible magical historian. And she's still alive, said Harry. And she lives in Godric's Hollow. Ron's Auntie Muriel was talking about her at the wedding. She knew Dumbledore's family, too. Be pretty interesting to talk to, wouldn't she? Oh, oh. Gonna change that. Oh, and if you're watching, please like the video. That helps very much. Thank you very much. There was a little too much understanding in the smile Hermione gave him for Harry's liking. He took back the letter and the photograph and tucked them inside the pouch around his neck, so as not to have to look at her and give himself away. I understand why you'd love to talk to her about your mum and dad, and Dumbledore too, said Hermione. But that wouldn't really help us in our search for the Horcruxes, would it? Harry did not answer, and she rushed on. Harry, I know you really want to go to Godric's Hollow, but I'm scared. I'm scared at how easily those Death Eaters found us yesterday. It just makes me feel more than ever that we ought to avoid the place where your parents are buried. I'm sure they'd be expecting you to visit it. It's not just that, Harry said, still avoiding looking at her. Muriel said stuff about Dumbledore at the wedding. I want to know the truth. He told Hermione everything that Muriel had told him. When he had finished, Hermione said, Of course, I can see why that's upset you, Harry, but I'm not upset, he lied. I'd just like to know whether or not it's true, or... Harry, do you really think you'll get to the truth from a malicious old woman like Muriel, or from Rita Skeeter? How can you believe them? You knew Dumbledore. I thought I did, he muttered. Oh, come on. Although I can understand it. I can understand why he thinks this, but there's been so many times of doubt, Harry. I understand everything's very unstable in his life all the time. And Dumbledore doesn't tell him everything. Even though Dumbledore told him he would, he didn't. In a way, Dumbledore lied to Harry, I find. That vase is great. I need to get myself one. Yeah, I should probably just sell on Etsy with vases. Vase cups. But you know how much truth there was in everything Rita wrote about you. Doge is right. How can you let those people tarnish your memories of Dumbledore? He looked away, trying not to betray the resentment he felt. There it was again. Choose what to believe. He wanted the truth. Why was everybody so determined that he should not get it? Shall we go down to the kitchen? Hermione suggested after a little pause. Find something for breakfast. He agreed, but grudgingly, and followed her onto the landing and past the second door that led off it. Oh, so she just ran in because they were scared they couldn't find him. I thought they were like, there's something that's happened. There were deep scratch marks in the paintwork below a small sign that he had not noticed in the dark. He paused at the top of the stairs to read it. It was a pompous little sign, neatly lettered by hand, the sort of thing that Percy Weasley might have stuck on the bedroom door. Do not enter without the express permission of Regulus Arcturus Black. Excitement trickled through Harry, but he was not immediately sure why. He read the sign again. Hermione was already a flight of stairs below him. Hermione, he said, and he was surprised that his voice was so calm. Come back up here. What's the matter? R.A.B. I think I found him. Oh! Regulus Arcturus Black. Regulus. Okay. Interesting. So this dude might be the one that stole the Horcrux. There was a gasp, and then Hermione ran back up the stairs. In your mum's letter, but I didn't see... Harry shook his head, pointing at Regulus's sign. She read it, then clutched Harry's arm so tightly that he winced. Sirius's brother, she whispered. He was a Death Eater, said Harry. Sirius told me about him. He joined up when he was really young, and then he got cold feet and tried to leave. So they killed him. That fits, gasped Hermione. If he was a Death Eater, he had access to Voldemort, and if he became disenchanted, then he would have wanted to bring Voldemort down. She released Harry, leaned over the banister, and screamed, Run! Run! Get up here, quick! Ron appeared, panting a minute later, his wand ready in his hand. What's up? If it's massive spiders again, I want breakfast before I... It's like, I can deal with them, I will deal with them, but first I need to eat, and then I can deal with massive spiders. Please, just food first. He frowned at the sign on Regulus's door, to which Hermione was silently pointing. What? That was Sirius's brother, wasn't it? Regulus Arcturus... Regulus... R.A.B. The locket! You don't reckon... Let's find out, said Harry. He pushed the door. It was locked. Hermione pointed her wand at the handle and said, Alohomora. There was a click, and the door swung open. They moved over the threshold together, gazing around. Regulus's bedroom was slightly smaller than Sirius's, though it had the same sense of former grandeur, whereas Sirius had sought to advertise his difference from the rest of the family. Regulus had striven to empathize the opposite. The Slytherin colors of emerald and silver were everywhere. Emerald and silver. Whoa. Emerald and silver. What do I have here? I got pure white. Think that'd be good? I got green, purple, and what I got before. Pure white? Green? There we go. You can do green. I can play around with this a bit more at some other point. Find the right one. All right. The Slytherin colors of emerald and silver were everywhere, draping the bed, the walls, and the windows. The black window crest was painstakingly painted over the bed, along with its motto, Toujours pur, toujours pur. I don't know what that means. Beneath this was a collection of yellow newspaper cuttings, all stuck together to make a ragged collage. Hermione crossed the room to examine them. They're all about Voldemort, she said. Regulus seems to have been a fan for a few years before he joined the Death Eaters. A little puff of dust rose from the bed covers as she sat down to read the clippings. Harry, meanwhile, had noticed another photograph. A Hogwarts Quidditch team was smiling and waving out of the frame. He moved closer and saw the snakes emblazoned on their chests. Slytherins. Regulus was instantly recognizable as the boy sitting in the middle of the front row. He had the same dark hair and slightly haughty look of his brother, though he was smaller, slighter, and rather less handsome than Sirius had been. He played Seeker, said Harry. What? Said Hermione vaguely. Well, vaguely, not what? Seeker? Said Hermione vaguely. She was still immersed in Voldemort's press clippings. Could you please say he's not the Messiah, he's a very naughty boy in your Mrs. Weasley voice? Sarah, thank you. He's not the Messiah, he's a very naughty boy. I don't know why you want to know that, but don't misuse it. He's sitting in the middle of the front row. That's where the Seeker... Never mind, said Harry, realizing that nobody was listening. Ron was on his hands and knees, searching under the wardrobe. Harry looked around the room for likely hiding places and approached the desk. Yet again, somebody had searched before them. The drawer's contents had been turned over recently, the dust disturbed, but there was nothing of value there. Old quills, out-of-date textbooks that bore evidence of being roughly handled, a recently smashed ink bottle, its sticky residue covering the contents of the drawer. It means always pure in French. Oh, it's kind of like Nazis. Huh? Always pure? A lot of these purist wizards are a little bit Nazi-ish, aren't they? He moved... Oh, wait, where were we? There's an easier way, said Hermione, as Harry wiped his inky fingers on his jeans. She raised her wand and said... Okay. She raised her wand and said, Accio Locket! Nothing happened. Ron, who had been searching the folds of the faded curtains, looked disappointed. Is that it, then? It's not here. Oh, it could still be here, but under counter-enchantments, said Hermione. Charms to prevent it being summoned magically, you know. Like Voldemort put on the stone basin in the cave, said Harry, remembering how he had been unable to summon the fake locket. How are we supposed to find it, then? Asked Ron. We search manually, said Hermione. That's a good idea, said Ron, rolling his eyes, and he resumed his examination of the curtains. The curtains! The curtains! Ron's searching the curtains. They combed every inch of the room for over an hour. But were forced finally to conclude that the locket was not there. The sun had risen now. Its light dazzled them even through the grimy landing windows. It could be somewhere else in the house, though, said Hermione in a rallying tone as they walked back downstairs. As Harry and Ron had become more discouraged, she seemed to have become more determined. Whether he'd managed to destroy it or not, he'd want to keep it hidden from Voldemort, wouldn't he? Remember all those awful things we had to get rid of when we were here last time? That clock that shot bolts at everyone, and those old robes that tried to strangle Ron. Regulus might have put them there to protect the locket's hiding place, even though we didn't realize it at... Harry and Ron looked at her. She was standing with one foot in midair, with the dumbstruck look of one who had just been obliviated. Her eyes had even drifted out of focus. At the time, she finished in a whisper. Something wrong? Asked Ron. There was a locket. What? Said Harry and Ron together. In the cabinets in the drawing room. Nobody could open it, and we... Harry felt as though a brick had slid down through his chest into his stomach. He remembered. He'd even handled the thing as they passed it around, each trying in turn to prise it open. It had been tossed into a sack of rubbish, along with a snuff box of wart cap powder and the music box that had made everyone sleepy. Is this from a previous book? I just cannot remember it. Was this when they were cleaning the whole place? Because that's impressive if she put that in there. Reference to book 5. That is crazy. Come on now. Wow. So they were just like, Horcrux, 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 Horcrux. You try it. No, I'll try it. Wow. Okay. That's that's impressive. That's impressive she put it in there that early. Kreacher nicked loads of things back from us, said Harry. It was the only chance, the only slender hope left to them, and he was going to cling to it until forced to let go. He had a whole stash of stuff in his cupboard in the kitchen. Come on! So they might have accidentally just thrown out the Horcrux? He ran down the stairs, taking 2 steps at a time, the other 2 thundering along in his wake. They made so much noise that they woke the portrait of Sirius's mother as they passed through the hall. Filth! Mudbloods! She screeched after them as they dashed down into the basement kitchen and slammed the door behind them. Harry ran the length of the room, skidded to a halt at the door of Kreacher's cupboard, and wrenched it open. There was a nest of dirty old blankets in which the house elf had once slept, but they were no longer glittering with the trinkets Kreacher had salvaged. The only thing there was an old copy of Nature's Nobility, a wizarding genealogy. Refusing to believe his eyes, Harry snatched up the blankets and shook them. A dead mouse fell out and rolled dismally across the floor. Ron groaned as he threw himself into a kitchen chair. Hermione closed her eyes. Ron, just scaredy cat. It's not over yet, said Harry, and he raised his voice and called, Kreacher! There was a loud crack, and the house elf that Harry had so reluctantly inherited from Sirius appeared out of nowhere, in front of the cold and empty fireplace. Tiny, half-human-sized, his pale skin hanging off him in folds, white hair sprouting copiously from his bat-like ears. He was still wearing the filthy rag in which they had first met him, and the contemptuous look he bent upon Harry showed that his attitude to his change of ownership had altered no more than his outfit. I don't know why, but whenever you do a raspy voice, the mic does not pick it up properly. Voldemort or Mrs. Black's portrait just now. Oh, okay. It might have been because I changed something around. So thanks for letting me know that. I will change that around again. Master, croaked Kreacher in his bullfrog's voice, and he bowed low, muttering to his knees. Back in my mistress's old house with the blood traitor Weasley and the mudblood. I forbid you to call anyone blood traitor or mudblood, growled Harry. He would have found Kreacher, with his snout-like nose and bloodshot eyes, a distinctively unlovable object, even if the elf had not betrayed Sirius to Voldemort. I've got a question for you, said Harry, his heart beating rather fast as he looked down at the elf, and I order you to answer it truthfully. Understand? Yes, master, said Kreacher, bowing low again. Harry saw his lips moving soundlessly, undoubtedly, framing the insults he was now forbidden to utter. 2 years ago, said Harry, his heart now hammering against his ribs. There was a big... Ribs are down here. There was a big gold locket in the drawing room upstairs. We threw it out. Did you steal it back? There was a moment's silence, during which Kreacher straightened up to look Harry full in the face. Then he said,
Yes.
Where is it now? Asked Harry jubilantly, as Ron and Hermione looked gleeful. Kreacher closed his eyes as though he could not bear to see their reactions to his next word.
Gone.
Gone? Echoed Harry, elation flooding out of him. What do you mean, it's gone? The elf shivered. He swayed. Kreacher, said Harry fiercely, I order you.
Mundungus Fletcher,
croaked the elf, his eyes still tight shut.
Mundungus Fletcher stole it all. Miss Bella and Miss Sissy's pictures, my mistress's gloves, the Order of Merlin, first class, the goblets with the family crest, and...
Kreacher was gulping for air. His hollow chest was rising and falling rapidly. Then his eyes flew open and he uttered a blood-curdling scream.
And the locket! Master Regulus's locket! Kreacher did wrong! Kreacher failed in his orders!
Harry reacted instinctively. As Kreacher lunged for the poker standing in the gate, he launched himself upon the elf, flattening him. Hermione's scream mingled with Kreacher's, but Harry bellowed louder than both of them. Kreacher, I order you to stay still! He felt the elf freeze and released him. Kreacher lay flat on the cold stone floor, tears gushing from his saggy eyes. Harry, let him up, Hermione whispered. So he can beat himself with a poker? Snorted Harry, kneeling beside the elf. I don't think so. Right, Kreacher, I want the truth. How do you know Mundungus Fletcher stole the locket? Mundungus.
Kreacher saw him,
gasped the elf, as tears poured over his snout and... Oh, he's crying, right. And into his mouth full of graying teeth.
Kreacher saw him coming out of Kreacher's cupboard with his hands full of Kreacher's treasures. Kreacher told the sneak thief to stop, but Mundungus Fletcher laughed and ran.
You called the locket Master Regulus's? Said Harry. Why? Where did it come from? What did Regulus have to do with it? Kreacher, sit up and tell me everything you know about that locket and everything Regulus had to do with it. Here, let me just quickly try to fix this one problem with the sound here. Let me know if this is any better when I do the voices. So let's see now. Let's see. I don't know if the quality of the mic has changed because I can't hear it back. But you let me know when I get to those screechy voices or if it's different right now. Okay. The elf sat up, curled into a ball, placed his wet face between his knees and began to rock backwards and forwards. When he spoke, his voice was muffled but quite distinct in the silent, echoing kitchen. Okay, let's see here.
Master Sirius ran away. Good riddance, for he was a bad boy and broke my mistress's heart with his lawless ways. But Master Regulus had proper pride. He knew what was due to the name of Black and the dignity of his pure blood. For years he talked of the Dark Lord, who was going to bring the wizards out of hiding to rule the Muggles and the Muggle-borns. And when he was 16 years old, Master Regulus joined the Dark Lord. So proud, so happy to serve. And one day, a year after he had joined, Master Regulus came down to the kitchen to see Kreacher. Master Regulus always liked Kreacher. And Master Regulus said... He said...
The old elf rocked faster than ever.
He said that the Dark Lord required an elf.
Voldemort needed an elf? Harry repeated, looking round at Harry and Ron and Hermione, who looked just as puzzled as he did.
Oh, yes,
moaned Kreacher.
And Master Regulus had volunteered Kreacher. It was an honor, said Master Regulus, an honor for him and for Kreacher, who must be sure to do whatever the Dark Lord ordered him to, and then to come home.
Kreacher rocked still faster, his breathing in sobs.
So Kreacher went to the Dark Lord. The Dark Lord did not tell Kreacher what they were to do, but took Kreacher with him to a cave beside the sea. And beyond the cave there was a cavern, and in the cavern was a great black lake.
The hairs and the what is that? What is he gonna reveal? What is going on? The hair on the back of Harry's neck stood up. Kreacher's croaking voice seemed to come to him from across that dark water. He saw what had happened as clearly as though he had been present.
There was a boat.
Of course there had been a boat. Harry knew the boat. Ghostly, green, and tiny. Bewitched so as to carry one wizard and one victim towards the island in the center. This, then, was how Voldemort had tested the defenses surrounding the Horcrux. By borrowing a disposable creature, a house elf.
There was a basin full of potion on the island. The Dark Lord made Kreacher drink it.
Oh, no way! That's why he's so not disfigured, but like, yeah, for a house elf. The elf quaked from head to foot.
Kreacher drank, and as he drank, he saw terrible things. Creatures inside burned. Kreacher cried for Master Regulus to save him. He cried for his mistress Black, but the Dark Lord only laughed. He made Kreacher drink all the potion. He dropped the locket into the empty basin. He filled it with more potion. And then the Dark Lord sailed away, leaving Kreacher on the island.
Oh, I feel so bad for Kreacher. I feel so bad. Oh, man. Poor little guy. Of course he's messed up. He's no Dumbledore that can handle that kind of thing. Holy smokes. I feel really bad for Kreacher. Harry could see it happening. He watched Voldemort's white, snake-like face vanishing into darkness, those red eyes fixed pitilessly on the thrashing elf whose death would occur within minutes, whenever he succumbed to the desperate thirst that the burning potion caused his victim. But here, Harry's imagination could go no further, for he could not see how Kreacher had escaped.
Kreacher needed water. He crawled to the island's edge and he drank from the black lake, and dead hands, came out of the water and dragged Kreacher under the surface.
How did you get away? Harry asked, and he was not surprised to hear himself whispering. Kreacher raised his ugly head and looked back at Harry with his great, bloodshot eyes.
Master Regulus told Kreacher to come back,
he said. I know, but how did you escape the Inferi? Kreacher did not seem to understand.
Master Regulus told Kreacher to come back,
he repeated. I know, but, well, it's obvious, isn't it, Harry? Said Ron. He disapparated. But you couldn't apparate in and out of that cave, said Harry. Otherwise, Dumbledore... Elf magic isn't like wizard's magic, is it? Said Ron. I mean, they can apparate and disapparate in and out of Hogwarts when we can't. There was silence as Harry digested this. How could Voldemort have made such a mistake? But even as he thought this, Hermione spoke, and her voice was icy. course, Voldemort would have considered the ways of house elves far beneath his notice, just like all the purebloods who treat them like animals. It would never have occurred to him that they might have magic that he didn't. Oh, right.
The house elf's highest law is his master's bidding,
intoned Kreacher.
Kreacher was told to come home, so Kreacher came home.
Well then, you did what you were told, didn't you? Said Hermione kindly. You didn't disobey orders at all. Kreacher shook his head, rocking as fast as ever. So, what happened when you got back? Harry asked. What did Regulus say when you told him what happened?
Master Regulus was very worried, croaked
Kreacher.
Master Regulus told Kreacher to stay hidden, and not to leave the house. And then, it was a little while later, Master Regulus came to find Kreacher in his cupboard one night, and Master Regulus was strange, not as he usually was, disturbed in his mind. Kreacher could tell, and he asked Kreacher to take him to the cave where Kreacher had gone with the Dark Lord.
And so they had set off. Harry could visualize them quite clearly. The frightened old elf and the thin, dark seeker, which so resembled Sirius. Kreacher knew how to open the concealed entrance to the underground tavern, knew how to raise the tiny boat. This time it was his beloved Regulus who sailed with him to the island with its basin of poison. And he made you drink the potion? Said Harry, disgusted. But Kreacher shook his head and wept. Hermione's hands leapt to her mouth. She seemed to have understood something.
Master Regulus took from his pocket a locket like the one the Dark Lord had,
said Kreacher, tears pouring down either side of his snout-like nose.
And he told Kreacher to take it, and when the basin was empty, to switch the lockets.
Kreacher's sobs came in great rafts now. Harry had to concentrate hard to understand him.
And he ordered Kreacher to leave without him. And he told Kreacher to go home and never to tell my mistress what he had done, but to destroy the first locket. And he drank all the potion, and Kreacher swapped the lockets and watched as Master Regulus was dragged beneath the water, and...
"Oh, Kreacher!" wailed Hermione, who was crying. She dropped to her knees beside the elf and tried to hug him. At once he was on his feet, cringing away from her, quite obviously repulsed. Okay. I'm just like, I'm trying to clarify what is happening here. Okay, so Regulus worked for Voldemort. Voldemort needed a house elf to test this whole thing, so he took the house elf with him to the island, made him drink the whole thing, then put the locket in. And then Regulus said, "Let's go back there." He took Kreacher with him. Then he drank the whole thing, swapped out the lockets, and then went beneath the water. For what reason? Don't tell me. But if I'm right in assuming this is the course of events, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Okay. Am I right in assuming this series of events? I think that's what happened, right?
The mudblood touched Kreacher. He will not allow it. What would his mistress say?
I told you not to call her mudblood, snarled Harry. But the elf was already punishing himself. He fell to the ground and banged his forehead on the floor. That is the course of events. Why doesn't it make sense? Well, it doesn't make sense. I mean, why would Regulus swap out the lockets and then just what for what reason? And why would he be dragged under the water? If it hasn't been told yet, please don't tell me. But if it has been revealed, if it all makes sense till now, please tell me. I just don't quite understand it. He fell to the ground and banged his forehead on the floor. Stop him! Stop him! Hermione cried. Don't you see now how sick it is, the way they've got to obey? Kreacher, stop! Stop! Shouted Harry. The elf lay on the floor, panting and shivering, green mucus glistening around his snout. A bruise already blooming on his pallid forehead where he had struck himself, his eyes swollen and bloodshot and swimming in tears. Harry had never seen anything so pitiful. So you brought the locket home, he said relentlessly, for he was determined to know the full story, and you tried to destroy it. It's supposed to make sense. It's being revealed right now. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Nothing Kreacher did made any mark upon it,
moaned the elf.
Kreacher tried everything he knew, but nothing would work. So many powerful spells upon the casing. Kreacher was sure the way to destroy it was to get inside it, but it would not open. Kreacher punished himself. He tried again. He punished himself. He tried again. Kreacher failed to obey orders. Kreacher could not destroy the locket, and his mistress was mad with grief.
Sorry. I did something wrong for a second there, and I got my voice. Oh, okay.
Because Master Regulus had disappeared, and Kreacher could not tell her what had happened. No, because Master Regulus had forbidden him to tell any of the family what happened in the cave.
Kreacher began to sob so hard that there were no more coherent words. Tears flowed down Hermione's cheeks as she watched Kreacher. She's got such a big heart. But she did not dare touch him again. Even Ron, who was no fan of Kreacher's, looked troubled. Harry sat back on his heels and shook his head, trying to clear it. I don't understand you, Kreacher, he said finally. Voldemort tried to kill you. Regulus died to bring Voldemort down. But you were still happy to betray Sirius to Voldemort? You were happy to go to Narcissa and Bellatrix and pass information to Voldemort through them? Harry, Kreacher doesn't think like that, said Hermione, wiping her eyes on the back of her hand. He's a slave. House elves are used to bad, even brutal treatment. What Voldemort did to Kreacher wasn't that far out of the common way. What do wizard wars mean to an elf like Kreacher? He's loyal to people who are kind to him, and Mrs. Black must have been, and Regulus certainly was, so he served them willingly and parroted their beliefs. I know what you're going to say, she went on, as Harry began to protest, that Regulus changed his mind. But he doesn't seem to have explained that to Kreacher, does he? And I think I know why. Kreacher and Regulus's family were all safer if they kept to the old pureblood line. Regulus was trying to protect them all. Sirius? Sirius was horrible to Kreacher, Harry, and it's no good looking like that. You know it's true. Kreacher had been alone for a long time when Sirius came to live here, and he was probably starving for a bit of affection. I'm sure Miss Sissy and Miss Bella were perfectly lovely to Kreacher when he turned up, so he did them a favour and told them everything they wanted to know. I've said all along that wizards would pay for how they treat house elves. Well, Voldemort did. And so did Sirius. Ooh-wee! Harry had no retort. As he watched Kreacher sobbing on the floor, he remembered what Dumbledore had said to him mere hours after Sirius's death.
I do not think Sirius ever saw Kreacher as a being with feelings as acute as a human's.
Kreacher, said Harry after a while. When you feel up to it, please sit up. It was several minutes before Kreacher hiccuped himself into silence. Then he pushed himself into a sitting position again, rubbing his knuckles into his eyes like a small child. Kreacher, I'm going to ask you to do something, said Harry. He glanced at Hermione for assistance. He wanted to give the order kindly, but at the same time he could not pretend that it was not an order. However, the change in his tone seemed to have gained her approval. She smiled encouragingly. Kreacher, I want you, please, to go and find Mundungus Fletcher. We need to find out where Master Regulus's locket is. It's really important. We want to finish the work Master Regulus started. We want to ensure that he didn't die in vain. Kreacher dropped his fists and looked up at Harry.
Find Mundungus Fletcher,
he croaked. And bring him here, to Grimmauld Place, said Harry. Do you think you could do that for us? As Kreacher nodded and got to his feet, Harry had a sudden inspiration. He pulled out Hagrid's purse and took out the fake Horcrux, the substitute locket in which Regulus had placed the note to Voldemort. I'll ask later. Kreacher, I'd like you to have this, he said, pressing the locket into the elf's hand. This belonged to Regulus, and I'm sure he'd want you to have it as a token of gratitude for what you... Overkill, mate, said Ron, as the elf took one look at the locket, let a howl of shock and misery, and threw himself back to the ground. Overkill, mate. It is a nice action, though. It took them nearly half an hour to calm down Kreacher, who was so overcome to be presented with a black family heirloom for his very own. It was too weak at the knees to stand properly. Oh, I really like Kreacher now. I really like him because all of his motivations come from a place of hurt and actually obeying. And he's been so mistreated. I actually really like him now. When finally he was able to totter a few steps, they all accompanied him to his cupboard, watched him tuck up the locket safely in his dirty blankets, and assured him that they would make its protection their first priority while he was away. He then made 2 low bows to Harry and Ron, and even gave a funny little spasm in Hermione's direction that might have been an attempt at a respectful salute. Before disapparating with the usual loud crack. End of chapter. Okay, so Regulus was in Voldemort's envoy, I think you call it. He was a part of the Death Eaters, but then so Voldemort went and tested out this thing with Kreacher, and then Regulus decided to work against Voldemort to try to destroy the locket. I hope I'm right with that. So he goes, swaps it out, and dies, right? And that's it. And then Kreacher comes back. He has the locket that he stole, but then Mundungus took it away. Yes, that's all true. Okay, great. Wow. Okay. Well, my opinion of Kreacher has turned. It has twisted. Chapter 11. The Bribe. If Kreacher could escape a lake full of inferi, Harry was confident that the capture of Mundungus would take a few hours at most, and he prowled the house all morning in a state of high anticipation. However, Kreacher did not return that morning or even that afternoon. By nightfall, Harry felt discouraged and anxious, and a supper composed largely of moldy bread, upon which Hermione had tried a variety of unsuccessful transfigurations, did nothing to help. Kreacher did not return the following day, nor the day after that. However, 2 cloaked men had appeared in the square outside number 12, and they remained there in the night, gazing in the direction of the house that they could not see. Death Eaters, for sure, said Ron, as he, Harry, and Hermione watched from the drawing room windows. Reckon they know we're in here? I don't think so, said Hermione, though she looked frightened. Or they'd have sent Snape in after us, wouldn't they? Do you reckon he's been in here and had his tongue tied by Moody's curse? Asked Ron. Yes, said Hermione. Otherwise he'd have been able to tell that lot how to get in, wouldn't he? But they're probably watching to see whether we turn up. They know that Harry owns the house, after all. How do they... began Harry. Wizarding wills are examined by the Ministry, remember? They'll know Sirius left you the place. The presence of the Death Eaters outside increased the ominous mood inside number 12. They had not heard a word from anyone beyond Grimmauld Place since Mr. Weasley's Patronus, and the strain was starting to tell. Restless and irritable, Ron had developed an annoying habit of playing with the Deluminator in his pocket. This particularly infuriated Hermione, who was whiling away the wait for Kreacher by studying the tales of Beedle the Bard, and did not appreciate the way the lights kept flashing on and off. "Will you stop it?" she cried on the third evening of Kreacher's absence, as all light was sucked from the drawing room yet again. "Oh, sorry, said Ron, clicking the Deluminator, restoring the lights. "I don't know I'm doing it." "Well, can't you find something useful to occupy yourself?" "What, like reading kid stories?" "Dumbledore left me this book, Ron." "And he left me the Deluminator. Maybe I'm supposed to use it." Unable to stand the bickering, Harry slipped out of the room unnoticed by either of them. He headed downstairs towards the kitchen, which he kept visiting because he was sure that was where Kreacher was most likely to reappear. Halfway down the flight of stairs into the hall, however, he heard a tap on the front door, then metallic clicks and the grinding of the chain. Yo, little creepy music, hey? Every nerve in his body seemed to tauten. He pulled at his wand, moved into the shadows beside the decapitated elf-heads, and waited. The door opened. He saw a glimpse of the lamplit square outside, and a cloaked figure edged into the hall and closed the door behind it. The intruder took a step forwards, and Moody's voice asked, "Severus Snape!" Then the dust figures rose from the end of the hall and rushed him, raising its dead hand. "I don't know who this is." It was not I who killed you, Albus," said a quiet voice. The jinx broke. The dust figure exploded again, and it was impossible to make out the newcomer through the dense grey cloud it left behind. Harry pointed his wand into the middle of it. "Don't move!" He had forgotten the portrait of Mrs. Black. At the sound of his yell, the curtains hiding her flew open. She began to scream,
"Mudbloods and filth dishonoring my house!"
Ron and Hermione came crashing down the stairs behind Harry, wands pointing, like his, at the unknown man now standing with his arms raised in the hall below. Lupin! Okay, great.
Hold your fire. It's me, Remus."
"Oh, thank goodness," said Hermione weakly, pointing her wand at Mrs. Black instead. With a bang, the curtains swished shut again, and silence fell. Ron, too, lowered his wand, but Harry did not. "Show yourself," he called back. Lupin moved forwards into the lamplight, hands still held high in a gesture of surrender.
"I'm Remus John Lupin, werewolf, sometimes known as Moony, one of the 4 creators of the Marauders map, married to Nymphadora, usually known as Tonks. And I taught you how to produce a Patronus, Harry, which takes the form of a stag."
"Oh, all right," said Harry, lowering his wand. "But I had to check, didn't I?"
"Speaking as your ex-Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher, I quite agree that you had to check. Ron, Hermione, you shouldn't be quite so quick to lower your defenses."
They ran down the stairs towards him. Wrapped in a thick black traveling cloak, he looked exhausted, but pleased to see them.
"No sign of Severus, then?"
he asked. "No," said Harry. "What's going on? Is everyone okay?"
"Yes," said Lupin. But we're all being watched. There are a couple of Death Eaters in the square outside."
"We know."
"I had to apparate very precisely onto the top step outside the front door to be sure that they would not see me. They can't know you're in here, or I'm sure they'd have more people out there. They're staking out everything that's got any connection with you, Harry. Let's go downstairs. There's a lot to tell you, and I want to know what happened after you left the burrow."
They descended into the kitchen, where Hermione pointed her wand at the grate. A fire sprang up instantly. It gave the illusion of coziness to the stark stone walls and glistened off the long wooden table. Lupin pulled a few tear beers from beneath his traveling cloak, and they sat down.
I'd have been here 3 days ago, but I needed to shake off the Death Eater tailing me, said Lupin. So, you came straight here after the wedding?
No, said Harry. Only after we ran into a couple of Death Eaters in a cafe on Tottenham Court Road. Lupin slopped most of his butterbeer down his front.
What?
They explained what had happened. When they had finished, Lupin looked aghast.
But how did they find you so quickly? It's impossible to track anyone who apparates, unless you grab hold of them as they disappear.
And it doesn't seem likely they were just strolling down Tottenham Court Road at the time, does it? Said Harry. We wondered, said Hermione tentatively, whether Harry could still have the trace on him.
Impossible, said Lupin.
Ron looked smug, and Harry felt hugely relieved.
Apart from anything else, they'd know for sure Harry was here, if he still had the trace on him, wouldn't they? But I can't see how they could have tracked you to Tottenham Court Road. That's worrying. Really worrying.
He looked disturbed. But as far as Harry was concerned, that question could wait. Tell us what happened after we left. We haven't heard a thing since Ron's dad told us the family was safe.
Well, Kingsley saved us, said Lupin. Thanks to his warning, most of the wedding guests were able to disapparate before they arrived.
Were they Death Eaters or Ministry people? Interjected Hermione.
A mixture. But to all intents and purposes, they're the same thing now, said Lupin. There were about a dozen of them. But they didn't know you were there, Harry. Arthur heard a rumor that they tried to torture your whereabouts out of Scrimger before they killed him. If it's true, he didn't give you away.
Well, that's a good thing about Scrimger. Harry looked at Ron and Hermione. Their expressions reflected the mingled shock and gratitude. This music's a bit... doesn't really work for this. He had never liked Scrimger much. But if what Lupin said was true, the man's final act had been to try to protect Harry.
The Death Eaters searched the burrow from top to bottom, Lupin went on. They found the ghoul, but they didn't want to get too close. And then they interrogated those of us who remained for hours. They were trying to get information on you, Harry. But of course, nobody apart from the Order knew that you had been there. At the same time that they were smashing up the wedding, more Death Eaters were forcing their way into every Order-connected house in the country. No deaths, he added quickly, forestalling the question. But they were rough. They burned down Dedulus Diggle's house. But as you know, he wasn't there. And they used the Cruciatus curse on Tonk's family.
Whoa, what's that curse again, please?
Again, trying to find out where you went after you visited them. They're all right. Shaken, obviously, but otherwise okay.
Torture. Okay, just a torture curse. Okay, thank you. The Death Eaters got through all those protective charms, Harry asked, remembering how effective these had been on the night he had crashed in Tonk's parents' garden.
Well, you've got to realize, Harry, what you've got to realize, Harry, is that the Death Eaters have got the full might of the Ministry on their side now.
Ooh, that's not good. Why? Oh, no. They killed Scrimger. But what does that mean? Why would everybody just suddenly defect? There's probably just portions of people who are like, okay, yeah, I'll do whatever you say.
They've got the power to perform brutal spells without fear of indication or arrest.
Okay.
They managed to penetrate every defensive spell we'd cast against them, and once inside, they were completely open about why they'd come.
And are they bothering to give an excuse for torturing Harry's whereabouts out of people? Asked Hermione, an edge to her voice.
Well,
said Lupin. He hesitated, then pulled out a folded copy of the Daily Prophet.
Here,
he said, pushing it across the table to Harry.
You'll know sooner or later anyway. That's their pretext for going after you.
Harry smoothed out the paper. A huge photograph of his own face filled the front page. He read the headline over it. This is just a headline. I'm not going to do the whole thing for a headline. Wanted for questioning about the death of Albus Dumbledore. So they're putting Dumbledore's death onto Harry? Oh my gosh. That is the cruelest move. Ron and Hermione gave roars of outrage, but Harry said nothing. He pushed the newspaper away. He did not want to read any more. He knew what it would say. Nobody but those who had been on top of the tower when Dumbledore died knew who had really killed him. And as Rita Skeeter had already told the wizarding world, Harry had been seen running from the place moments after Dumbledore had fallen.
I'm sorry, Harry,
Lupin said. So Death Eaters have taken over the Daily Prophet too? Asked Hermione furiously. Lupin nodded. But surely people realize what's going on.
The coup has been smooth and virtually silent, said Lupin. The official version is Scrimgeour's murder is that he resigned. He has been replaced by Pious Thicknessy, who is under the Imperious curse.
Why didn't Voldemort declare himself Minister for Magic? Asked Ron. Lupin laughed.
He doesn't need to, Ron. Effectively, he is the minister. But why should he sit behind a desk at the ministry? His puppet, Thicknessy, is taking care of everyday business, leaving Voldemort free to extend his power beyond the ministry.
This is crazy. That's nuts. It's coup, not coop. Thank you very much. It's crazy. That's crazy. He's got the whole ministry. He's got the whole ministry in his hand. He's got the whole ministry in his hand. He's got the whole ministry in his hand. Voldemort's got the whole ministry in his hands. It's crazy. Thicknessy. Thick boy. So he's a thick boy.
Naturally, many people have deduced what has happened. There's been such dramatic change in ministry policy in the last few days, and many are whispering that Voldemort must be behind it. However, that is the point. They whisper. They daren't confide in each other, not knowing whom to trust. They are scared to speak out, in case their suspicions are true and their families are targeted. Yes, Voldemort is playing a very clever game. Declaring himself might have provoked open rebellion. Remaining masked has created confusion, uncertainty, and fear.
And this dramatic change in ministry policy, said Harry, involves warning the wizarding world against me instead of Voldemort?
That's certainly part of it, said Lupin. And it is a masterstroke. Now that Dumbledore is dead, you, the boy who lived, were sure to be the symbol and rallying point for any resistance to Voldemort. But by suggesting that you had a hand in the old hero's death, Voldemort has not only set a price upon your head, but sown doubt and fear amongst many who would have defended you.
Meanwhile, the ministry has...
Meanwhile, the ministry has started moving against Muggleborns.
Lupin pointed at the Daily Prophet.
Look at page 2.
We are at an hour, so... Yeah, okay, this goes on for a while. Okay, so we're going to end there. Seems like a good place to end before they get into more information. Oh, thank you for all the compliments there in the chat. This was another information-heavy laden chapter, but a good one. A lot of exposition in this one. Not a lot of like action-y things happening, but it's good. Gives us a lot of insight, and it does progress the story quite a bit with Kreacher and his backstory, and Remus. And now we know where the locket is, actually. So I wonder what's going to happen when he gets back. I got to run right now, but I hope you're having a good evening. Thank you for listening in, and I will see you, let me see, tomorrow. Yes, we'll see you tomorrow again at 6 p.m. Thank you, everybody. It was a great time. Bye-bye.